IHS, advancing decisions that advance the world.
Until recently, nuclear power had, if you like, won the debate in Europe. Governments and their electorates recognised that if Europe was going to supply electricity whilst reducing its carbon emissions, then nuclear power was going to be an essential component in the generation mix. Since the events at Fukushima in Japan, governments have reacted in different ways. The most important reaction we've seen so far is from the German government, which shut down 7 of its oldest nuclear reactors. Now, so far, no other governments have followed suit in Europe. However, there is widespread recognition that governments need to do more to convince their electorates, essentially, that nuclear power is safe and reliable and it doesn't pose an immediate threat. In order to achieve this, the EU is going to institute a set of stress tests. Now, no one quite knows yet what the details of those stress tests will involve. These stress tests will determine the capacity for our nuclear stations to withstand shocks such as flooding, earthquakes, or even terrorist attacks, including planes being flown into them. The big winner from this is likely to be gas. Nuclear power emits next to no carbon emissions for all the energy it generates. So if a large proportion of the nuclear fleet goes out of commission, Europe's going to have to generate its power from somewhere. Now, we can get a certain amount of that from wind or solar, but the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. So in order to have a continuous baseload supply of power, we'll rely either on coal or gas. Now, coal is a relatively dirty form of generation because it emits a lot of carbon dioxide. The remainder is essentially gas. And if we're going to be using a lot more gas, the big winner is Russia, the #1 exporter to Europe. If the European nuclear renaissance were to stall completely in Europe, obviously the companies involved in either the construction or the maintenance of nuclear power stations stand to lose. So we're thinking here of Areva, Siemens, ABB, for example. On the flip side of that, companies involved in the renewable energy generation stand to benefit a great deal from that, so basically wind and solar producers as well. Finally, the actual utilities involved in operating the nuclear power plants will probably stand to lose in the sense that they won't have a steady baseload supply of electricity. However, in the case of Germany, it's touch and go. Yes, the utilities stood to benefit from having a cheap supply of electricity in the form of nuclear. However, the German government imposed quite strenuous taxes on the fuel rods and on simply being able to run the power stations themselves. Without this extension, the government will be expected to reduce that tax burden. So it swings and roundabouts for the utilities.
IHS, advancing decisions that advance the world.